Okay, hello everybody. This is the Higher Way podcast with Bob here, with another very interesting guest who evidently we go back a fair way. So we have met in the past. He's now doing lots of different stuff. He's got a book coming out in mid-August, and there's a documentary coming out on Friday that you've got to check out on Facebook. But we're going to find out about this and much more as I introduce you to Tommy Joe Moore. Hiya, Tommy. How are you doing, mate?
Hello. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Great to have you on the podcast, mate. I've been looking at your stuff on Facebook, and we got chatting on Facebook, I believe. And of course, you trained with an old student of mine, didn't you?
I did. So I used to, when I was young, in between lots of other different arts, I used to train with Ben Bates at Dino's gym in Birmingham, and Eddie Quinn, again, another one there.
Yeah.
And you actually used to grade me when I was a kid. So
that's how old I am.
You used to grade me in Thai, and I remember because I was quite a big kid. I remember I did a couple of interclubs at one of your old places, right. And I must have been about 10, and there was another lad that was about 10, and you're like, oh, he's not fighting him. You had me fighting men when I was about 10.
Well, I do apologise, but
to be fair, I was about 6'1" when I was about 10, 11, so it was probably fairer that way.
Yeah. So that would have been at the studio then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been at the studio. I love the interclubs there. I love the smell of the Thai oil, and I always loved that you had there was like old Thai robes and mongkongs and swords.
Oh, that's right.
I remember thinking that was an amazing toy box of things.
Yeah. Oh, it was a great gym. And I mean, I had all those weapons, and we had the shrine, and it was very traditional, you know.
Yeah.
I've always tried to keep it as traditional as possible, but it's not about me. I'm more interested in you started off in Muay Thai as a young lad, 10 years old, as you say, fighting in interclubs under Ben Bates. Yeah. And Ben's a tough old bugger, wasn't he?
He is. So in fact, I started with boxing. So
right.
So a lot of people box in my family. So when I was about 5, I started boxing, and about 6, I started judo, and I've been doing boxing and judo ever since.
Right.
So boxing and judo has been my kind of foundational 2 arts. So I was pretty lucky to have that as a starting point for martial arts, because as martial arts go, being punched in the face and punching other people in the face and being ragged around and thrown on the floor and doing the same to other people, you can't get more gritty and visceral than that. You know, if you cock it up, you suddenly know what you're doing wrong, and if you do it right, you feel amazing, because you feel, you know, on the mat you can do anything. So I think that they're 2 arts which I've always loved, and everything I've ever done since then has been somewhat related to those arts. So obviously from the boxing, which I've always done, there's been the Thai, which, you know, has got a similar ethos. You know, from the judo, there's been Ju-Jitsu, there's been catch wrestling, but again, similar ethos. So for me, that kind of combat sports mindset has been massively, massively important to me.
So at an early age, you were involved in contact. I sent my kids, when I came to Birmingham back in '84, rather than send my kids to a karate club or come to my Thai boxing club, I actually sent them to a judo club, because I think it's great for young, particularly 5, 6, 7-year-olds, because they're not going to get bloody noses or smashed up, but they're going to learn about physical contact, aren't they?
Exactly, and I think it's the art, especially judo, for young kids. They're already wrestling each other about anyway, so they might as well learn to do it scientifically. And I think the great thing about them, that the judo clubs are everywhere. There's cheap as chips. Most of it's one of the few arts that doesn't have many egos in it. You know, you don't get many judo teachers that take the piss. They're all decent, solid, nice guys. You know, you get different levels of people, but in a judo club, you know, you very rarely see it, because it's a competition atmosphere. So you can't bluff, because people know. You know, you have to compete for your belts, and if you're not very good, you won't win and you won't get your belts. You know, it's a meritocracy, which I think is really good for arts.
No, and I think the point you made there about the judo clubs, even the judo clubs at Birmingham University, it's really old school. Yeah. And, you know, everybody's jumped on the MMA bandwagon. and that'd be quite easy. And people have asked me in the past, "Oh, why don't we do MMA at the gym?" I go, "No, I'm a Thai boxer. I'm not into, I'm not into mixed martial arts. However good they might be, I'm not interested." And the judo guy I met at Birmingham University, a guy called Fitz. He's an old West Indian guy in his late 50s. Traditional judo, trained in Japan and so on. Probably get him as a guest on here, if he's not, but he's too shy. You know what I mean? And it's a really nice old school attitude. It's not about, getting as many people in there as possible. It's about the quality of the people and the type of training. And I think that's what you're saying, isn't it? Really, it's keeping that quality.
Keeping that quality. I think that's where arts that have sense of competition do keep themselves in check. I think it's quite easy for people on the self-defense and on the martial arts side of the spectrum. You start to drink your own Kool-Aid a little bit because there aren't the checks and balances that you get in combat sports.
Yeah.
But there are weaknesses in all things. I think there are a great many things that self-defense martial arts can teach combat sport artists, and I think vice versa. I'm really keen that things that work, such as combat sports, if you can apply them in a self-defense setting, you've got the perfect mix of mindset and physical attribute. So that's in the stuff that I do. That's what I try and bring together. I love training for sports martial art, and I'm lucky to be still young enough to compete. But by the same token, one day I won't be. But there's no reason for me to abandon all the tools from combat sports and take a whole load of new stuff. They can still work for you.
Two things you mentioned there, right? Age. So how old are you?
I'm 32.
Right. And the other one was mindset, right? Which you don't hear. I think it's getting more prevalent now. But you don't still really hear much people talking about the psychology behind violence, for example. And not just the fighting, but the intention to fight, or the desire to build higher levels of awareness so you can control the environment. Why did you mention mindset? Well, how does that figure with what you do?
Because for me, mindset is king. I think that if your mind's switched on right, you don't need any of the physical tools. You don't sometimes need the physical fitness. You don't need any of the techniques. If you go up to a normal young working class lad in a council estate in the country and give him a slap, he doesn't need to be taught how to fight. He'll just fight you. He doesn't. It's innate in humans. Our monkey brain is good enough as it is. You can make it better, but our basic combative brain is pretty decent. We can all grab someone and keep smashing their face in, and that works. I think that cultivating mindset is one of the hardest things for people to do. And I really believe for a lot of people, they've got it or they don't. I think you can hone your mindset, and I think you can develop it. But I get a lot of people come in and say, could you teach anyone to fight? Can you teach anyone? And the answer, I think, really is no. You can teach people techniques, and they can do it in a sports hall where the lights are on, everything's nice. Can you teach everyone to be a fighter, to do that well? I'm not sure that's genetically in everyone. But I think that if there's a spark of that mindset there, that's the thing you need to develop more of.
So it's about spotting it in the individual and then nurturing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is what we do with fighters, essentially. Some people are born to fight. It's just in them. They want to fight, either in the ring or, on the street. But the majority, and I don't know whether you agree with me on this, but I feel that the majority of people don't want to fight.
Yeah.
And so you have to give them a different way of dealing mentally with the situation, don't you? So what would be your views on that? Because you've already intimated that some people are born with it. Yeah, it's very difficult to install it in someone.
I think some people are born mentally the worker ant, and some people are mentally born the soldier ant. And for many people, that crossover is quite hard. And it's simultaneously, it's hard for people that are too wired up for violence to go the other way. If you're too much in that soldier ant methodology, you being able to be a normal, respectable, decent human being can be very hard. So sometimes it's good to have that normal person, mentally relaxed mindset. I think that a lot of arts try to foster a false sense of mindset. I'm going to pick on an art now because
this is what I was driving at. You see, because I know it's something close to my heart. So come on then.
So I'm going to pick on an art. I'm going to pick on Krav Maga.
Yay!
Krav Maga. But now, what annoys me in the combatives world is that they say everything's stress tested, pressure tested.
Yeah.
And you'll have a couple of probably middle class blokes in their 30s, 40s, 50s in a leisure centre, and they'll fake the preamble to violence, the aggressive, the posturing, the verbal violence. And they'll go through that scenario, and they'll do the violence, and they'll do the fence, and they'll go off. But that doesn't simulate real fear, because you know that man is Keith, the accountant from Slough, and you will never fear him like you fear some lad that you don't know outside the chippy at 2 a.m. So you start to build the idea that you can handle yourself, but in reality, you're becoming just a very good dramatist, a very good actor. You're asking people that violence isn't really their career to pretend violence is their career, fake an attack on you. And I also find that, and especially, I say Krav, but a lot of the Krav-esque, there's lots of.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
there's a lot of drills where, for example, people are just being slapped by old people with pads, and they go, "Oh, I'll cover with my elbows," and then attack. And pads are lovely and soft. If you say take those pads off and you all give Dave a couple of digs, he's not going to stand there doing all this. He's going to be on the floor pissing blood. And I think a lot of combative arts, the core nucleus of what you need to defend yourself, you can probably learn in 8-10 weeks, and you can keep sticking to that. I think where a lot of the combative arts have gone wrong is they realise you rapidly lose students unless you're an interesting teacher.
And that's the thing with that's the thing with these systems, isn't it? They have a plethora of techniques in order to keep students, because they believe that if you're only teaching them, say, for example, when I'm teaching self-protection, I'll teach palm heel strikes, elbows, and run away, essentially, for most people. It's only like the people who are born for the soldier ants, as you would call them, would actually spend time developing a variety of techniques, and then they probably only use one anyway, which would be their favorite one, the headbutt or the slap in the jaw. And I've noticed that with a lot of these systems, and Krav's not the only one, but we're talking about that one, so let's keep on that. It's a business, essentially. And this is what it's become about, quantity rather than quality. And, having a plethora of techniques keeps people interested. And sadly, you've already intimated this, that you're giving them a false sense of confidence, really. The lad from Slough who's an accountant, he's no way he's going to be able to deal with the level of violence that he's going to see, which is commonplace, say, in somewhere like where I live, Northfield, on a Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah.
So,
if you're replicating fear, go spar at one of the boxing gyms in Lazelle's. That's fear. That's controlled fear, but you don't know anybody. And if you're the stranger in the boxing gym and you go in those rounds, that is scary as fuck. Scary as fuck for everyone. Doesn't matter how good you are. You walk into someone else's gym, it's a scary ass place. Yeah. And everyone's looking at you, and they're doing their pad work, and they're looking at you, and the bags, and they're looking at you. There's that. It's a bit like Rocky 3, where Rocky goes to Apollo's gym. It's that kind of, everyone's giving you the eye. It doesn't matter who you are, they're giving you that. That's a fear to cultivate. Someone saying, give me your money, mate, stay back. It's too much comedy for me. I personally can't take it.
Well, it's impossible to replicate the conditions, to be honest. It is impossible to replicate them. I mean, I've scared some students when I've talked to them to demonstrate, what fear is. And, I've had people say, well, that you ship me up and I know you. I said, well, imagine how more difficult it's going to be dealing with somebody you don't know. Yeah. And we weren't standing in a gym when I scared the living daylights out of you. And they don't get it. People don't get it.
The unknown is scary. It's the same reason. If in the army you're doing an escape and evasion course, they don't send people you've been training with for 10 weeks to chase you. They send a couple of paras that would fucking love to catch you out and make you look like a right mug. They'll send the other, the unknown, the strange after you, because that's much scarier.
Of course it is.
And I think, that's where a lot of arts, when they don't cross-train, when they don't go to other clubs, they don't try other things, that's when it starts to, the cracks start to occur. You just get very complacent. It becomes more like a martial social club. And that's exactly what they've become. Yeah. I mean, they call them muck dojos now, don't they? Yeah.
You
But
know,
I think that at least in the traditional martial arts world, there is probably a burgeoning acceptance that a lot of this stuff isn't massively useful for self-defense.
yeah,
A bit of it is, and there's nuggets in there. If you really hack it out, a chop to the throat, chop to the throat, no matter how you dress it up. But I think a lot of the traditional martial arts are starting to realize, yeah, okay, some of this is recreation, some of it is historical, some of it is self-defense, and we're happy with that composition. I
yeah,
think there's a big, massive boom in self-defense arts now, which just have really good marketing, cool promo videos. The founders typically are switched on. You know, they've got a core curriculum, and when they run out of interesting stuff and stuff for videos, that's where you start to move from the good to the ridiculous. You know,
yeah,
I have no doubt in my mind that the founder of Krav was an hard bastard, and you know, in the military field, he could box, he could wrestle, he could grapple. You know, and I can see over time now, I see people that are combatives instructors that would fall over in a strong wind. You know, and that's hard to take. That's why I like the combat arts and combat sports, because you can't hide. You can't hide it, which is useful. There's nowhere to hide. And if you are having a crap day and you are getting battered in sparring, it's also not a taboo. It's encouraged to go get better. I think a lot of the traditional people, if they do have a go and they do lose, they never go back there again. It's like, oh, sod that, that's a scary place.
So the way you deal with things mentally, okay? So let's go back to when you came down to my gym. You know,
Yeah.
you talk a strange gym. It's full of sweaty men. There's all these swords and ties and shrines, and it has an atmosphere about it, and everybody's there to do a job, which is to fight each other on the day. Yes, we know it's controlled, but you were 10.
Yeah.
So can you remember what was going through your mind, particularly when you reminded me that I put you with a man and you were only 10? You know, I mean, I'm horrified that I did that, but obviously you were a big lad.
Ben doesn't remember, but I remember once going down to your gym in advance of that interclub to get a bit of extra sparring in.
Yeah,
And he wanted to do a focus lesson on clinch. And to
right.
prove a point, I remember Ben putting me against some of his older, bigger lads, and he's like, if someone knows how to clinch, they'll knock you over. And they're like, nah, you won't. And 10-year-old me's chucking people around in the clinch. So, like, it is scary. Like, it is visceral. And you're right.
Yeah,
You see people, you're always giving the beady. You've seen someone on the bag and, yeah, you know. And when people are looking at you, you also go bloody hard at that bag.
yeah,
So if you're the guy on the bag and on the pads, you start to give it all that with your verbals and your eyes and your mean mugging and your swaggering. No one means to do it. No one's being a dick. It's just inner primal human to know that if you and me are going to spar in 5 rounds, I want you to be aware that I'm some degree of threat. You know, no one really means to be that way. I don't think anyone gives it much thought, but that just naturally happens. I think for me, dealing with fear, because I was chucked into combat sports really early, it's not embarrassing to lose. I think as soon as you lose the fear of losing, you're all right. You know, it's only an interclub. So if you get battered, yeah, it's fine. I think you need to lose the shame of defeat. There's a big stigma in defeat. I think what's really sad in boxing today, and I read a lot about historical boxing, is today a boxer, they'll try and carry you so you're undefeated, 100-odd fights, and they'll see that as a good thing. You think of some of the best, amazing historical boxers up till about the 1960s. It's not embarrassing to have 10, 20, 30 losses on your record. No. And you should. If you're fighting people 100 times and you win 100 times, you're fighting bums. You're fighting cans.
Well, I had a fight, I don't even remember him, Jason Purnell, and he literally lost 25, maybe 26 fights on the trot. Yeah. And I was like, what are you going to do then? And he goes, well, I know I'm going to win the next one. And that was the way he saw it. I will win one. The odds are that I win. And he did. He won his next fight, you know. And I loved his attitude. And he was a useful role model to have, because you get young lads coming in and they'd lose their first fight and you wouldn't see them again. And I'd say you would. And I think you'll agree with me here as well, Tommy, that when you lose a fight, you learn so much more than when you win.
Yeah.
You know, you know that you've got more to do.
It's always best to lose your first fight because it's just out of the way. It's the elephant in the room gone, you know, and you can, a bit like your driving test. If you pass your first driving test, grand. But that's an exception, not the rule. And I think if it's your first fight, winning should be the exception, not the rule. You know, you should expect a couple of learning knocks, you know, matching fairly, but expect that losing is probable in a 2-man fight.
Yeah. Well, I try and breed a thing into the guys, so there's no like big build up for the fight. We might know when there's a fight coming up, and I say to the guys, just train as we normally train in the fighters class. I'll pad you, we'll sort you out. Don't worry about it, and we'll go down and we'll fight. It's not a big deal. And the attitude I start to get in the guys, I've noticed, is they don't get nervous or scared before the fight. They get excited that they've got a fight. And there's a different, and you see a lot of fear in changing rooms, before fights, a lot of fear. Whereas I like to think most of my guys are buzzing because they want to fight, because that's what they've trained for,
And win or lose, most people are actually really happy after having a scrap, whether it's an interclub or a fight. Most people, they're hugging each other in
minutes,
and even if they've just done a white collar and they've just had a bit of a scrap, and it doesn't matter if they've won or lost, they're getting pissed and partying with their families half an hour later. It's kind of good for the soul. It's cleansing for the soul for some people.
Well, I mean, it's that cliche, isn't it? Just I say this to the guys, and it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. Just getting in the ring.
Yeah.
Just getting in that ring, mate. Look at all these people who are watching you, telling you what to do. They wouldn't get in and do this, mate.
Yeah.
And that does bolster confidence in the individuals, which brings us right back to what you were saying at the beginning. Introduction to martial arts through contact, i.e., judo and boxing. It's got to have gone somewhere to build your mindset, hasn't it?
Yeah, but I think there's also a trap as well for me as an instructor. Anyway, I am a 6'3", 6'4", heavy, big man, and I'm relatively fit and relatively agile. I can box, I can wrestle, I can do stuff. So that gives me a degree of confidence.
Yeah,
I've got to realise that the small welterweight in the class and that guy that's pushing 55, he's not me and I'm not him.
no.
And getting used to being an active martial artist, but also someone that coaches people. And the biggest learning curve for me has been able to be like, if I were you, what could I do? How could I make it better using the limitations or the opportunities? I train guys that are bigger than me, smaller than me, older than me. So it's about tapping into their matrix and helping them be better. I think one of the things that I'm very keen on is very personalized training. I think if you've got too many pupils, you can't give them what they need. If you're training 30 odd people, it's great for a fun seminar, that's great. But if you're regularly week in, week out training people, you won't clock all of the things that makes them a better fighter. You're short, you're going to have to learn to get in. You can only give that guy the time and training on getting in if the class is small to medium size. Otherwise, he's just going to keep getting jabbed in the face. These, I think, small class sizes and being an empathetic instructor, understanding other people and their mindsets and their backgrounds, and some might come to you with more timidity, some might come to you and they're too confident. You get a lot of guys come in and they're barroom heroes, they're undisputed champion of Weatherspoons, but soon as they start to lose to some nerd that you've got in your class, their confidence melts from them and you need to build them back up again. It's quite an interesting, diverse mix of people. It attracts a lot of nutters, martial arts, a whole lot.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah,
but I love the richness of different people. You can take the time to develop people if you're a good instructor, I think.
I had one of my students who teaches for me down in Wales said somebody was joining the camp online, like Facebook, joining the group. He said, I've just started training. Can I join the group? It was like a closed group. And we, of course, led him on. He seemed like a nice guy. And he said, it's really good to be part of such a nice club. And one of the instructors from Wales said, we're not a club, mate, we're a family.
Yeah.
And we all look after each other, It's small family, we're dysfunctional. Welcome aboard. and the prior teacher has always been a bit dysfunctional, to be fair. I don't know where that comes from. But anyway, but no, I mean, all the things you say are really important. And it's nice to hear somebody who's come from a full contact background talking about small classes, right? Because that leads me on to what you're doing now. Because you've talked about coaching, you've talked about classes. I mean, we've got a book that's coming out. We'll talk about that in a bit, and a little documentary, a little movie coming out tomorrow. So you're obviously doing your Thai, you've been doing your judo, your boxing, and so on. What? Because now you're involved in Bartitsu, right?
Yep.
So a lot of people, right, will not have a clue what that is. I mean, the name has been around a long time,
Yeah.
and I used to see it all the time. And there were one or two people actually involved in it, okay? And quite honestly, I never got any involvement myself because I was running Thai boxing clubs and so on. But I want to know, as much as anybody else listening, I want to know tell us what Bartitsu is.
So Bartitsu is part of something called HEMA. So there's a move in the martial arts called historical European martial arts, and people all around the world are going away and discovering use of things like long swords, spear, rapier. There's hundreds and hundreds of books and guides and treaties and all sorts of things. And people go away and they recreate it and they spar with it and they test it and they meet up. So a lot of people that do normal martial arts won't realize that there are hundreds and thousands of people around the world right now learning how to use a double-handed broadsword. They're learning how to use sharp weapons. They're learning double-handed blunt weapons. And they're really picking that up. And as part of that movement, there is unarmed HEMA. So these are historical martial arts that require no weapon. And there's lots of European arts that are weaponless. So we look at things like catch wrestling. We look at the very early bare knuckle boxing, or what's called classical pugilism. There's a French kickboxing art called Savate. There are lots and lots of unarmed Western martial arts, especially historically. And one of those arts is Bartitsu. So when I was starting to look more into HEMA, and I like to pick up different things from different arts, I discovered that there's kind of this unarmed side to it, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty good at unarmed combat. I'm gonna have a little look at this, and I come across Bartitsu. And Bartitsu is a martial art founded by a British railway engineer called Edward William Barton Wright in the late 1800s. And he goes to Japan and he learns classical Ju-Jitsu. And he brings that back to London. And essentially, he's a bit of a shrewd businessman. He looks at London at the time, and for the wealthy middle and upper classes, he sees a scene of moral panic. Gentlemen are no longer being respected. There's a risk of you being a wealthy man coming back from the opera or the theatre, that a group of people will mug you, will batter you, will steal your wife, will do bad things to you. And that's very embarrassing for people that have a sense of entitlement and sense of self-worth, gentlemen. So Barton Wright takes Ju-Jitsu and he adds boxing and Savate, catch wrestling and weapon usage. And he takes what are predominantly combat sports and puts them together into a holistic self-defense syllabus, predominantly for gentlemen in street self-defense. And so he makes this syllabus and he runs his classes for a number of years. And it's essentially one of the first mixed martial arts. The arts are pulled together from varying arts and taught by varying instructors. So he's not like a founder myth figure that he can do everything. He brings in the best wrestler. He brings in the best Savate guy. He brings in the best boxers so that his students get the best experience.
This is like Bruce Lee before Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee before Bruce Lee.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's taking what works, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, fencing, smushing it together with mindset training. These are the skills. You can box, but can you box for the street? Can you punch the throat as opposed to the chin? It takes nuancing and tailoring. And he pulls that together into a good, interesting syllabus. His problem at the time is he's not a particularly good salesman. So all of his best coaches start to realize they can make a lot more money. And this is the same problem a lot of people have today. A lot more money, not making money for Barton Wright. So they bugger off and they go teach people.
Nothing changes, does it?
Nothing changes. And he's very extortionate with his prices himself. So his business falls apart. But what we're left with is quite a few magazine articles and manuals and guides about how Barton Wright imagined Bartitsu. And there's been a big revival movement for martial artists to go into that, find those materials, and essentially replicate them for modern day. There's the stuff that he did himself, which is limited. And there are people of his time and of his era that taught boxing, Savate, and cane. So we call that the antagonistics. So people take the antagonistics, the canon, which is all the official stuff from Barton Wright, smush it together and teach Bartitsu. And people have been doing that for about 20, 30 years. I would say that when I picked it up, when I started looking into it, a lot of that scene is very academic. So HEMA itself has got lots of people that are very academic and they read a lot of sources and they're very good historians, but their ability to have gritty, visceral fighting is limited. And your pain response when you're Fencing, when you're doing historical fencing, is less because you've got a fencing mask on and you've got a gambeson. Your immediate, that bloody hurts, I better not get hit that way again, is a little bit less than your average judo gym or boxing gym.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get used to the idea of not being hurt and not hurting others. And so it makes a kind of, for many people, a soft HEMA, a soft Bartitsu. So I looked at it and thought, this was designed to keep you safe on the street. It was not designed for play acting. The people that were going to the gym, these were, it's at the time called the dawn of physical culture. People, especially, wealthy people, gentlemen, they were starting to get used to the idea, I should probably have a good physique. I should probably be able to weightlift and swim and horse ride and fence and box. These are already strong-minded and strong-bodied individuals learning how to do a robust martial art, a martial art that works. And so I try and replicate that with what I do at the Bartitsu Lab, which is the name of my club. So I bring together the arts of the time. So boxing for bare knuckle self-defense, Savate, cane, catch wrestling, Ju-Jitsu, distill those into modern self-defense. And it's always through my lens. It's very much an open source martial art. People can go into it. The sources are available to everyone, and you can reflect out what you take from it. Yeah. Some people are very good with the cane, and they go in there and they just get really obsessed by the cane stuff. Some people really love the history side, and they'll do it in suits, and they'll be very classical. I take a slightly more fighty approach to it, but still, all of that is still legitimately Bartitsu.
I hope we don't call it fighty approach.
Yeah. I mean, it's a weird martial art. It's really niche, but benefits. It doesn't have those kind of bureaucratic governing bodies, structures. There's no faff in the way.
Yeah.
That is a strength and a weakness, because you can get some people teaching it that just couldn't box eggs. So I accept that. But by the same token, it's free of the bureaucracy that you would have if, say, you were going to go set up a Shotokan club or something else. There's a lot of bureaucracy there. And we know that it's an effective syllabus because it's made of arts that today we see still work. They're still alive. Boxing's still alive. Savate is still alive. Catch wrestling's still alive. So we know that all the things that make up Bartitsu work for self-defense and for proven combat sports.
Yeah.
So I find it really exciting and something to explore. But for me, it's about taking those combat sports and making them fit for self-defense. And that I like that transition. Take what I know works and find ways to make that work for people in scenarios outside of the ring, outside of the cage, outside of the mat. And that means a lot to me, to kind of pick the best of that world and give it to people in a format that suits their lives and how they want to keep themselves safe.
So you were saying you get different types of people who come along. So you've got the more sort of academic types who are very much into the history of it. You've got the more gritty, real guys who just want to learn how to use it. So from your perspective, you've sort of, do you stand with the feet in both camps? You're interested in the historical side as well as the physical side?
I'm like a man that's got a really weird stag do. When you have a stag do and you have groups of friends that never meet, and some of them,
I don't want to talk about weird stag do's because I know, go on.
So, for me, it feels like I've just delivered a weird stag do in that I've got people that know me as just Tommy the boxer, Tommy the judoka, and they wouldn't at all attribute me to, wearing tweed and swinging a cane around. Because they were doing 10 rounds with me pre-fight, So there's people that know me from that. There's people that know me from more self-defense orientated stuff, which is a bit grittier, a bit no nonsense. And there's people that know me from HEMA that see me play with swords and go with that historical martial arts style feel. So my club is made up of people from all three camps, and those three camps, those people would never otherwise meet and share ideas and train with each other. Boxers tend to train with boxers, or MMA guys.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
HEMA guys tend to only ever train in HEMA, So I see it as kind of a good cross-fertilization ground. It's kind of a neutral ground where everyone's welcome from whatever part you come to it. And my job is to make it fit for all of those people, to make sure everyone gets something good out of it. And I think it's a good, healthy balance. It's a good nutritional balance. The history is interesting. It's fascinating. It's good to do stuff that you can think, my ancestors could have done that. That's a really positive and interesting thought for a human being. Keeping yourself safe is really important. And if my Bartitsu didn't keep people safe, I couldn't legitimately say I was teaching Bartitsu. That's what it was put on the planet to do.
That's what it was designed for. Yeah.
So if I'm not doing that, what's the point? But by the same token, if one of my lads can't do 3 rounds of boxing, even if they don't win, if they can't do 3 rounds of boxing or 2 rounds of judo, I've kind of failed them a bit. If they can't grapple enough to survive that, or box enough to survive a couple of rounds, you know, I've not done a very good job. You know, they need to be able to give a good account of themselves. And
So
I think,
again,
you know,
you're qualifying, you're validating what they're doing, aren't you?
yeah, I see it very much like the army used to treat the notion of milling. You know, 1 minute punching each other in the face. It's not about winning or losing. It's about your fighting spirit. Can you keep going? You know, do you have what it takes to just have a go? And I think that's what I really want my students to do. You know, if I chuck them into a ring, if I haven't given them enough have a go attitude,
Yeah.
I've failed. So, you know, everyone's got to be able to survive the milling. Whether I put you in there with someone that's 18 stone and boxes for a living, you've still got to be able to survive 2 rounds. You might get absolutely pasted, but your mind still needs to be there. That I could kind of do this. I can survive it.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, milling's a useful way of sorting the wheat from the chaff, isn't it?
and
But
I love milling as an exercise because it breaks the cadence of combat sports. Where combat sports fall down for me is you get used to a rhythm, you know, and everyone that's been a combat sports guy, you flow into a rhythm. Jab, jab, cross, jab, cross. You know, we get used to a musical balletic rhythm, you know, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And we hit the bag like that, and we hit the pads like that, and then we fight like that. But fighting, real fighting, looks nothing like that.
No.
Proper fighting when you're emotionally invested and there is fear looks nothing like that rhythmic display. So the good thing about milling is it's the pressure testing systems of combat sports without the unnatural rhythm that you have when you're having a proper tear up. So I quite like the milling exercise, the mad minute, where people just go at it for a minute, because it matches the frenzy and pace of a real fight. And you should come out of it exhausted. You should come out of a 1 minute mill more exhausted than 6 rounds of full on sparring.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course that's where the intent is challenged as well. So, you know, if you have a weak mindset, trying to deal with just the thought of waiting in line to get in is going to test your mettle, essentially. I mean, I've seen it happening in the clubs where you see people, they come in full of bull and bluster, and they've got about 5. They'll come up to me and say, "When's my fight?" I go, "About 5 or 6. Don't worry about it. It's about 5 or 6. Depends on what happens here." And you see them go, and they just burrow down, and you know, they give up. They've lost before they even got in the ring. And they've got others who just get more and more wound up, ready. They get even more ready. You know, you probably remember from the inter club and coming at the gym. You know, that level of, well, there was a variety of individuals and personalities there. You know, and all of them prepared to be tested. So it's good that you're keeping that ethos, isn't it? Because it could be so easy to sell out with something new.
Yeah, precisely. You know, I think there is enough variety in the martial arts world that if you want to go and just have a play with it, if you want to just go do forms or do some like sparring, there's so much out there for you. And I don't begrudge anyone for doing the martial art that suits what they're into. If you enjoy kata, that's cool.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you enjoy putting on those kind of PVC mitts, you know, that is a great cardio. And if you know, if you're a 50-year-old dad and that brings you joy doing that tag style sparring, all the best for you, because that's an amazing thing. You know, I think there's a lot of tribalism in martial arts. I think it's you know, it's a big buffet world, and you eat what you want to eat. So, you know, I set out my vision as an instructor as to what I like to teach, and people come or they go. And I think where martial arts is in danger is where you try and overmarket to everybody, where you say we're good at self-defense, we're good at this, we're good at that, but without authentically having what it takes behind it. You know, it's much better to be honest, and consumers are so much more aware now. You know, people forget that students are consumers, and they can go on the internet, and if you're a bit shit, they'll see people saying you're a bit shit online. You know, everyone say, if you put anything online, people will say you're shit. So I do quantify that. No matter what you do, people will say, "Are you doing it wrong online?" So fuck those guys.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you know, you can shop around. You can see other clubs. Every medium-sized town now has at least 5-6 martial arts clubs.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
You can be an informed shopper. You could say, actually, that Laogar Kung Fu Club, that ticks all the boxes for me while I'm after it, and go get it.
Yeah.
I have to say, I'm probably teaching one of the weirder martial arts that people will have heard of, but that's cool.
No, but I think getting it out to a wide audience is really important. Particularly the HEMA thing, because I know like quite a few of my students were like, when I started getting into sword, they were like, "Well, what's that?" And I mentioned HEMA, and they were like, "Oh, they're just nerds, aren't they?" And I go, "Well, some of them are, and some of them aren't."
Yeah.
Because some of them will give each other a hell of a battering. And the Bartitsu fits in with the HEMA side of things anyway, because it's a historical European martial art. Um, so it's really good that somebody's out there actually using it the way it's supposed to be used.
Yeah.
And just coming back to the history element as well, because I'm making an assumption here that people get inspired by historical history stories, the myths and them. I know it's what got me into the sword was reading books on swordsmen of the British Empire, because these are real stories, these are real people. And in that day and age, you couldn't lie about your feats, because some bugger would come along and stab you and challenge you. Like Daniel McBain and George Silver, people of that ilk. And as you were saying, you used the term visceral. In those days, it was a real, if you said you were good with a sword, some bugger would come along and go, "I'll challenge you then, come on then."
Yeah.
And you'd get stabbed. So do you find that you use a lot of historical stuff from that period when you're teaching, or not?
I do. So I take stuff from primary sources, which is the canon, which is essentially, to be very honest, what Barton Wright left behind were magazine articles. And those magazine articles were designed to sell his club. So he's showing off his weirdest, strangest, most unorthodox and exotic stuff for punters in London. A lot of them had never heard of or seen Ju-Jitsu. So there is a lot of Ju-Jitsu in what he's publishing. And it makes sense. Whether there would be that much Ju-Jitsu in his actual syllabus, we don't know. But we've got his guides, then we've got the antagonistics, as I said. So lots of sources on specific areas. What we don't have, and what's up to the user, to the teacher in Bartitsu, is how do I knit those together, and how much emphasis I put on any one particular part of it. Because with Bartitsu, we don't know. We don't know how much time he would say dedicate to boxing as opposed to using the cane or grappling. We really don't know. So it's really up to the instructor to kind of play with that, play with the levels, switch things up or down, depending on their personal tastes and what they want to teach. So if you wanted to, you could train all of Bartitsu using source-only material. And you would learn each of the individual techniques, jabs, crosses, how to box, how to move, how to grapple. There's even lots on dirty fighting. You could just teach what's in the guides. And because it's a Victorian and Edwardian martial art, there's photographs, there's bits of film footage. It's not as hard as other bits of HEMA to practice and learn from, because you're not having to decipher medieval German. It's just Edwardian English. It's all right. It's not too bad. And a lot of the guys are military men. So they don't faff around with their writing. It's like, stand here, do this, punch face, back to square one. Drill.
There's an honesty to it, isn't there?
Yeah. But I would say that what an instructor has to do in Bartitsu, because there's nothing else that helps you, is how you weave together all those arts into a syllabus, into a thing that's useful to you. So, I'm currently writing a book at the moment called Modern.
Yeah, because I was going to say, so all of this knowledge now is coming together, isn't it, in a book? So tell us about the book, Tommy.
So there is no real other book out there that is a modern Bartitsu book that pulls together for the reader and saves them the faff of going to these different sources and picking up different techniques, because there are hundreds and hundreds of antagonistic sources. So essentially what the book is part one is me showing you how people of the era did the techniques. How did bare knuckle boxers of the late 1800s throw a lead off, which we would call a jab now? Why is it different to a jab? How is it different to a jab? Because it's bare knuckle. So for one example, a lot of bare knuckle boxing is done with a vertical fist. It's a bit safer on the fist. All of the bare knuckle boxers at the time swore by it. It was safer for them, allowed them to penetrate guards. So there's lots of rationale as to why they do things a little bit differently. So the first part of the book is how to do the techniques that match the age Bartitsu is from. And the second half of the book is, right, now you should be pretty decent at these things. How do you flow those together? Because Bartitsu, my book, the front of my book is a kraken. It's got multiple arms on it. That's the artwork.
Ah, right, right.
And the reason I think of this is that Bartitsu has many avenues. You know, if I'm fighting someone that's really good at kicking, I better be a better boxer than him. If he's a better boxer than me, I've got to be a better grappler than him. So, you know, the art of Bartitsu really is being decent enough at all these ranges and types of combat, so you're never at a distinct disadvantage. Yeah.
So for the first time, really in the history of Bartitsu, somebody's actually putting this material together, as you say, you know, in one book. So it's quite an undertaking, isn't it?
Quite an undertaking. I'm really proud of it, and I'll probably have to do several updated editions as people feed back. But it's a big old book, but it's designed a bit like a Haynes manual. You know,
okay.
if you want history of martial arts, if you want lots of text and prose, this is not the book. No. This is the book for someone that is pretty okay at martial arts to pick this up and go, if I want to start my own club, if I want to start my own thing, this is how I do it. You know, it's designed a bit like a kind of a club in a box. You can take my book, and you just start your own thing. You know, it distills it for you in a modern way with modern photographs, and I've been very certain to make good use of photography because you know it's very important. I will probably one day in the near future make a filmed version of this because it's easy. It's good for people to see motion as well. It's hard to capture motion in a traditional book.
Oh yeah.
Being a bit of a history nerd, I wanted a proper book. You know. So when I die, they can go, he made a book at least. He's got at least one book. But I think that, you know, that there's the book which is designed to help mostly somewhat experienced martial artists explore this. I think if you're completely new to it, you can pick it up. But I would say that without an experienced human saying, your leg's a bit wrong, your arm's a bit wrong, stop flaring your elbow when you do this, it takes the human eye, really, of an experienced trainer to
but that's true. That's true of all martial arts, isn't it? Really. In fact, if anything, you need a mentor, don't you? You need somebody to give you guidance who's been there and done it.
Yeah, and so you know, my main vision for the book is a technical worker's guide to Bartitsu, and I want people to put their cup of tea on it. I want them to scribble in it. I want them to doodle on it. You know, I don't want this to be a hefty tome that you just consume. I want you to read it when you're playing on the bag. I want you to read it when you're sparring. You know, I want it to be a proper robust guide for people that want to explore a historical martial art. Yes.
So has it got a sweat-proof cover on it?
I've tried hard to kind of really ruggedize it because I treat my books horrifically.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Corners, dog ear it, and I think that's a sign of love. You know, it's a bit like never trust someone with a punch bag that hasn't got tape on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Or pads that have never worn out. You got or gloves. Yeah, how long have you had those gloves? 5 years. Have you actually hit anybody with them? You know, how a pair of gloves even lasts 5 years is beyond me. Like,
it's where people they spend too much money and they'll buy like a set of Cleto raised gloves for 200 quid, and they're like,
well, yeah. I've had them in the gym. You know, I said, how much do they cost? Are you going to use them? Oh no, well, you know, they cost me 200 quid. Oh my god, can I borrow yours? No, you can't. That's what you're proper smelly, sweaty boots as well as smelly, sweaty gloves. Yeah.
But you know, I took a lot of inspiration from William Fairbairn.
Oh yeah, Fairbairn Sykes and all of their material.
So if audiences don't know, he's the guy that taught unarmed combat to the SOE, the commandos, ex-Shanghai military police officer. So you know, he's been in civilian and military situations that are just nasty and horrible. And his guides are very technical, very precise. You know, they allow people, you know, to give you enough information to learn and do the technique, but without clouding your judgment. And I'm a really strong believer that there's personalization in all martial arts. You know, a lot of the boxing guides, say the boxing element of Bartitsu.
Yeah.
Each boxer that wrote a book at that time said, you must stand this way, that way. You know, all of them are correct depending on how big, tall, long, how you like to fight. It'd be like if Floyd Mayweather, Sonny Liston, and Tyson Fury all made a boxing manual, they'd all tell you to stand differently.
Yeah,
they're all really good boxers. So it's I think people lose track, especially in Eastern martial arts, of the individuality of the human. So I've tried to tap into that with the book to say, do it your way. This is my advice from my experience, but if it feels good, basically, if you can hit someone with it and you don't get hit back, jackpot, you've done it all right.
So what you're doing is, which I've always liked to do, is that it's to teach the principles rather than you know, like you say, the exact position of the feet has got to be the same for everybody. It's about principles. Is it governed by fundamental principles like balance, coordination, speed, delivery of technique, and so on, isn't it?
Yeah. Martial principles are all you need, in my opinion. Techniques come and go, and they fade in your
Yeah,
mind, and they come in
yeah,
your mind. And whatever you find interesting at the time, you'll be buzzing about that technique, and other things will be on the shelf. I think martial principles, once you've got them, they don't leave you. If you can hit and stay on balance, if you can grapple and not fall over, those are martial principles. You know how to not fall over. You know how to strike with mass. Yeah. If someone knows how to punch, very quickly they can learn how to kick. And vice versa. Because you've got the martial principle of balance.
yeah. So we say we could call this podcast Tommy Joe Moore, Man of Principle. That's a name. Could be a good name for your next book on the philosophy of Bartitsu. You know what I mean? You get a bit more cerebral, yeah.
I think without getting too much like the slightly nuts Jeet Kune Do guys, and I love the Jeet Kune Do guys, but is it an art? Is it a philosophy? Is it a medium by which you filter? I don't want to get that cerebral with my Bartitsu.
No.
But I'm confident that if I can take historical combat sports techniques, put them through the filter of street self-defense, I have followed the vision of the guy who made it. And if I plug new stuff into it, I'm still following his methodology.
You see, that is a really nice, because we've done almost an hour now, believe it or not. And that's a really nice way to sum up everything you've talked about. Now, I think you've got a lot more to say, to be honest, because a lot of questions I want to ask. But because we keep these podcasts down to an hour, because quite simply, that's what people listen to, about an hour, and then people get bored. Yeah. So just to finish off, you've just wrapped things up really nicely there. You've got this documentary coming out tomorrow, right? We've got the book coming out in mid-August. What's your philosophy? I've asked everybody who's done this. You're the fifth one now, or maybe the sixth one. I've said to them the same thing at the end. If you got a philosophy? Because I know you studied religion and philosophy at Newport, didn't you?
I did indeed.
If you have, if you had a philosophy, what can you sum it up in a couple of words, Tommy?
It's
a toughie. It's a toughie.
It is a toughie. I would say to find the love in what you do. I think you need to love it to do it well. I think Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid, he's got a brilliant quote, and it's like, you're learning karate. It's like walking a road. If you walk on the left side of the road, if you karate do, yes, safe. Karate do, no, safe. Walk in the middle, like grape. And I love that. That stays with me forever. I think you need to learn to love what you do, and if you stop loving your particular art, it's time for you to let it go for a bit and try something new. I see too many people in martial arts as instructors and athletes and practitioners that fall out of love with what they do, but they stay in it. It's almost like a broken marriage. They just stay in this because they get used to the idea. Every Tuesday or Thursday, I do karate at the social club at 8, and it becomes the kind of duty training. You're training because that's what you've always done.
Yeah.
I think my philosophy is you need to be excited by it and love it. And soon as that love goes a bit, you need to think, why is that? Do I need to add a bit more grappling? Should I take some time with weapons? Should I sack it off and do Tai Chi for a bit? Look at my, whatever you want to do, it's about finding love in the art, because that's when you get the most from it. So don't get stuck in a rut. Keep experimenting, trying new stuff, because if it doesn't make you happy, it's important. Most people will never rely on their martial art for self-defense. Most people will never need to do it. So make sure it makes you happy first. That's the fundamental principle. If it brings you joy, it's a good thing to do.
And that I couldn't agree more with. If people are happy at the end of a session, you've done your job, haven't you? If people are smiling, and you're smiling as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And what that does, just to wrap things up finally, Tommy, that definitely comes, and I'm not blowing smoke up your arse, it definitely comes across as this is something you absolutely are mad about.
Yeah.
And you've devoted a lot of time to it, and for that, I take my hat off, mate. I mean, fair play to you. That 10-year-old boy, I'm glad I'm glad I know you, mate. And I'm so pleased that you've come on here, because this has been one of the clearest, most succinct podcasts we've done. That's no disrespect to the other guys, but this is, you've got that same enthusiasm that I'm still burning with, if you know what I mean. And it's great to see it in somebody at your age. So don't let it fucking go. Yeah. And take your own advice. If it gets boring, move on. Tommy, it's been bloody brilliant, mate. We're definitely going to get you on again. Okay, mate? And I just want to say thanks ever so much, mate. This has been a real pleasure. And we'll close the show there. So thanks for listening, guys. Look out for the next one. And there's going to be a part 2 with Tommy Joe Moore. Check out his Facebook page. The links are going to be down below in the comment section. Thanks again, Tommy. Cheers, mate.